Hello everyone. Welcome to another Study and Win a Prize session. How are we today? Hello Ade, are you there? Welcome to another session today. So over to you.
Welcome. We're glad to have you here. Welcome to another session, another study session of our AWS security series. Hi. Anybody that calls me Corey definitely knows me well. Hi. Nice to have you here. Where are you guys tuning in from? Drop a message below. Today is about to be very, very interesting because we're talking about a topic. We're going through a topic that I really love. Oh, hi, Olive. How are you? I'm good. I'm good. How are you? How are you? How was your day? Hope it wasn't too stressful. And also tell us where you are tuning in from. We've had amazing sessions. Oh, Ebenezer. Hi, Ebenezer from Surulere. Nice to have you here. It looks like Lagos people are always taking over our study sessions. Please, where is every other person from all around the world? We need more people from. Oh, thank you. Okay, please don't make me blush. We are live, please. Let's focus. Let's focus. Um, so today, according to the theme of this study session, the series of this session is security. So today our topic is going to be securing serverless applications built with AWS Lambda and API Gateway. Nice to meet you, Ken. Welcome, welcome. It's so great to have you here. And our speaker today is none other than Mimi Swem. She's a highly skilled software engineer that's very passionate about security in cloud computing. And I'm really looking forward to this session because she's extremely good with explaining, putting you through and all that. So I'm looking forward to this session as much as you guys are looking forward to this session. So stay tuned and let me bring Mimi up so she can. But while we wait for, oh, we have somebody from Egypt. Welcome, welcome from Egypt. Uh, while we wait for Mimi to come up, please don't forget that this study session it happens Mondays and Tuesdays. So we will definitely have another session tomorrow, study and win session. So we'll have a quiz. So make sure you stay till the end of this session because we'll have a quiz at the end of the session if you don't know. And also make sure you tune in tomorrow to join. So let's bring Mimi up to take us through the topic for today. Hi, Mimi.
Hello, please can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. I can hear you.
Okay, okay, great. Hello everyone. How are we doing? Hope we're all good. Hope everything is fine. Um, I'm really excited to be here. Genuinely, I'm very, very happy to be in everyone's midst right now. I did a wonderful job with keeping everybody intact, moderating really, really well, and I'm just looking forward to the entire experience. So I think we'll go straight into it right now as soon as my slides come up, so that we eventually go straight in and don't waste any time. So just quickly, while we wait for the slides to come up eventually, what are we all currently working on? Just a very random question. What are you currently working on? What AWS technology are you currently working on? Because in this class, we're going to be talking about AWS Lambda. And I'm just briefly very interested in seeing how many people are currently using Lambda, or how many people are currently about to use Lambda, or how many people are used Lambda previously. So what current AWS technology are you using? Just put it in the chat box. Let's see what's going on in our lives just briefly while the slides are coming up. Oh, okay. So I see Madhu saying I'm new to AWS. That's very fine. You're definitely in the right place, Madhu. There's a lot of amazing packages coming up from this user group. So I definitely am looking forward to everything, the entire experience. So you're definitely in the right place. So I see, oh, Dennis from Kenya. Hello, Dennis. Hope the weather in Kenya is good today. Okay, so currently I'm also seeing Dew said Lambda's basic. Oh, that's really nice. That's really nice. Dew is currently studying Lambdas. That's very interesting. That's basically what we're going to be doing today, majorly. So Salahu says he just started learning. That is very fine. Very fine. Honestly, this entire community is for people who have, people who are currently learning, and people who would eventually learn. So you're in the right place, regardless of what aspect in your tech journey you are in at the moment. You're definitely in the right place. So I see. Oh, Ebenezer is certified AWS CCP CSA. Nice. That's beautiful to know. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, I can also see Ebenezer saying he or she is looking forward to getting hands on. Definitely, like I said, I cannot overemphasize the fact that this is the best community for us to grow and thrive. This is definitely the best community for us to grow and thrive. Great, so we have our slides on. So I'm just going to go straight into the entire thing. So our topic is securing serverless applications built with Lambda and API Gateway, the best practices and strategies. So I'm actually really excited because just like I see someone in the chat who said they're currently learning Lambda. It's a really beautiful language, beautiful technology, most especially. And I can't wait for us to get into it. So, okay, next. Okay, so just a quick presentation overview. Okay, can we just go back a bit? Okay, so just a quick presentation overview. First of all, we'll be looking at an introduction to serverless architecture. And we're now going to go to AWS Lambda. We're looking at an overview of Lambda. We'll go to AWS API gateways, the basics and integration. We have the security challenges in serverless applications, the best practices for securing serverless applications. And the thing about this entire session is because we have very limited time, because I'm the type of person that loves, I'm very time conscious basically. And because of that, I feel like I'm just basically going to be giving us like an introductory aspect to the entire technology. And with time, eventually, we're going to go deeper into the entire thing. But for now, I think it's very important to at least understand the basics, at least be at an intermediate level, such that when we eventually give or bring more, it's easier to digest. At least let's start with milk. When we take milk and then when I start eating the meat and then we now go to the bones, basically. So I don't think it makes any sense to just go straight into the advanced things when we don't understand the basics. So this is going to be as simple. Everything here in this presentation is in layman's language, literally. So, like I said earlier, whether you're a beginner, whether you're at the intermediate level, whether you're an expert, you can definitely relate to this presentation. And that is my goal, all in all, for every single person to be able to understand and assimilate fully everything that's going to be here. So, next, please. So, what is serverless application? So, serverless architecture simply refers to a cloud computing execution approach for building applications without having to manage server infrastructure. So, in simple terms, in the simplest of terms, it's basically an architecture that gives you the ability to make use of various technologies on AWS without having to worry about your server deployment. So let me give you like a very easy scenario to understand this entire thing. So let's say you're a housewife or house husband, whichever you are, and then you have children. So now you have to do the cooking, you have to do the cleaning, you have to get the children ready for school, you have to help them with their homeworks, things of that sort. So if you eventually hire a chef or a cleaner, and now that chef cleans and cooks for you, you know that what you basically have to concentrate on is basically having to, at most picking the children up from school. You have to focus on their assignments. So now, knowing fully well that you don't have to think about cooking or you don't have to think about cleaning, your mornings are simpler. Why? Because your only duty in the morning is to get the children ready. Their food is already taken care of, their things are already clean. So you basically can only focus on that. And the fact that they can focus on only that little amount of work at the time increases your productivity generally. So eventually, as you go down, we look at some of the benefits of serverless architecture. There are so many benefits of serverless architecture. But in a nutshell, that's basically the concept of serverless architecture. Basically giving the cloud providers the ability to just manage your database, your server, your storage systems, especially when it comes to scaling, maintenance, and provisioning. So that way, you as a business can only focus on the most important thing, like deploying your codes, and monitoring your codes, and things of that sort. At least you know that when it comes to your servers, that is taken care of. So that's the whole essence of a serverless architecture. Next, please. So, what are the advantages of serverless applications? So, number one is cost efficiency. But now, before I get to cost efficiency, let me quickly speak on improved productivity because I can remember from the last example I gave, I spoke about how you as an individual having to just focus on having to get your children ready. The analogy with the children thing, where you can only all you need to do is to get your children ready for work and things of that sort. So if that's the only thing you have to focus on, it is definitely going to be easier generally for you to operate or for you to work simply because you have only one thing to focus on. So when it comes to improved productivity, serverless architecture is definitely a very big plus because you can only focus on the most important thing, which is going to be your cloud deployment. So your productivity is increased definitely because there's very minimal work you can concentrate on. So you can only just concentrate on your your codes, basically deploying them and things of that sort. So that's basically one of the major importance of a serverless architecture. So let me go back to cost efficiency, which is our next very good advantage of serverless application. So obviously there's going to be minimized cost. Why? Because traditionally or normally most companies that use servers, they always provision the resources based on the expected workload. But now if these cloud providers are handling your servers, you don't have to pay for the entire component. You can just only pay for what you need to make use of at the time. So obviously, like your cost is being saved because you don't have to pay for, like I said, the ideal resources that you would need generally when it comes to having to manage your servers because these companies are already doing it for you. So next, high availability and scalability. So one of the very good advantages of serverless applications or serverless architecture is the fact that the platform handles everything relating to the underlying infrastructure. So simply because there's already a set standard or there's already someone who can handle that, you don't have to look at a lot of other things. And just like very similar to the first instruction I gave, when everybody has a specific task allocated to themselves, it's easier to manage the task you have. So now, unlike a period where we see we see you as the housewife or the house husband, whatever it is, having to tackle cooking, cleaning, getting the children ready, things of that sort. If you know that your only focus is just getting your children ready, and then you know that a chef is there to get their food prepared, there is very, very little chances of you having to forget like in the past. So let me give an example. So now obviously like there's a lot of things you have to tackle all at the same time. So because there's a lot of things you have to tackle all at the same time, let's say you now eventually forget that you have to make the children's meal in the morning and then you finish getting them ready for school and you just remember, oh shoot, I've not gotten their food ready. Why did you forget? Because there's a lot of things on your mind. But then when you already have it delegated to somebody else, you're paying this chef, you just know that at the end of the day, food must be ready. No way, food no good day. There's always going to be food ready for your children. So that's a very, very big plus. So obviously it's always going to be available. That chef is going to always make sure that there is food. The same way your cloud providers will always make sure that your servers are being deployed. Then maintenance. Reduce routine maintenance tasks, reduce routine maintenance, all the same. So still very similar to the first illustration I gave. When you already have somebody who's in charge of something specific, you don't have to always come and revisit it a lot of times. Of course, at the end of the day, you can from time to time, look at what your chef is doing. But then I want to believe that whoever you're employing to come and work for you is very trustworthy. That's one we're putting that in at the back of our minds, the fact that he's very, 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 very capable of actually carrying out his duties. So there's already that trust, the same way you have the trust with your cloud providers, because I don't think if you don't trust them, you would not give your entire data, your business in their hands if you didn't trust their capabilities. So obviously you trust them, and because you trust them, you don't have to go and monitor everything they're doing, which is the major reason why they're there. So as long as you trust them, you don't have to come and be taking routine maintenance and all those type of things, because you can already trust them with everything. So that's how the whole relationship between the cloud providers and their clients also work. So with serverless applications now, you don't have to be monitoring everything every day. You already know that your cloud providers are there to provide and deploy your server. If there's any issue, they can always come to you and talk to you about it. But then it's good to know that there would be no issue if no issue is brought to your notice, if you get what I'm trying to say. Because obviously, like if there's a problem, then your chef will come and tell you, oh, Oga, money no day, there's no food again, or something of that sort. But it's not you having to now not see food and you're just wondering, like how is there no food? You get that type of thing. So obviously, if there's a problem, your cloud providers will let you know the issue even before it surfaces. So it makes everything very easy for you to manage and handle. Next slide. Oh, I just saw Ebenezer's comment. Okay, I'm really glad. I'm glad you enjoyed the example. Okay, so what is AWS Lambda? So AWS Lambda is a complete service that runs your code in response to events and automatically manages the compute resources, making the fastest way to turn an idea into a modern production serverless application. So what this is trying to say in essence is, what is big English? In summary, what AWS Lambda does is it is a serverless application. It's basically the serverless architecture for AWS. So AWS Lambda basically enables you run your codes in response to your event. It is event driven in essence. So that's basically all AWS Lambda majorly talks about. Of course, eventually as we move on, we'd see a lot of intricacies, the other aspects of it. But for now, for us to take our milk before we eventually start biting the meat and breaking the bones. In essence, that's just basically what AWS Lambda is. It's basically the AWS form. It's basically an AWS technology that enables us to carry out serverless or run serverless applications. That's just basically about it. That's what everything they're saying. The next slide, please. So how does Lambda work? So Lambda, like I earlier mentioned, is a serverless form of AWS, a serverless application form of AWS. And it's important to know how it works, definitely. So the first major thing when it comes to Lambda is uploading your codes. Because obviously the AWS system in general enables you maintain your business. So for your business to be on the net, then it's definitely in a website or an application, whatever it is, an app or a website. And websites are built on codes, obviously. So the first thing you have to do is to upload your codes to Lambda. So you start by uploading your codes to AWS Lambda. This can be written in several supporting programming languages, including Python, Node.js, Java, C Sharp, Go, and Ruby. So that's basically all that is. It's just simply telling you to upload your codes in very simple terms. So the next thing we do is we create a function. So in AWS Lambda, your code is organized into functions, and a function is simply a piece of code that performs a specific task. That's simply what a function is. So an example of a function is, let's say we have um let's say we have this cup, for instance, and this cup now is a very good example of a function. Why? Simply because I can use this cup to drink tea. If we have a tea party, for instance, I can bring this cup and I can use this cup for my tea party. If we go to a dinner setting, I could also use my cup. Everybody could be using wine glasses, but I can choose to use my cup because my cup can serve that purpose of me drinking my wine. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing, me having to drink my wine. So I could take my cup there too. I could take my cup to take water. I can take my cup anywhere. So in essence, what a function is, it's simply anything that helps you perform a specific task. And the good thing about functions is functions are reusable. So it's very, very important. It's my favorite cup, by the way. But anyways, so I just saw Abisola saying this cup is too big. But yeah, but that's basically what the function does. That's how big a function is, literally. Because the function can accommodate large amounts of data, and this data can be reused. So that's basically a simple illustration of what a function is. So a function is simply a piece of code that performs a specific task in essence, and it can be reused in different scenarios. Just like I can use my cup at a dinner party, I can use my cup at a tea party, I can use my cup to take water, I can use my cup to do anything. So regardless of the fact that it is one cup, I can simply use it in different scenarios or different places. So you define the function and you specify the event source. So basically what I'm saying, simply because the cup can be used in different scenarios. So you have to define it. And defining it is just simply telling it what it is supposed to do at the time. In this case, it would be me going for a tea party. If they ask me, oh, Mimi, where are you going with your cup? I'm going for a tea party. I've defined the reason for my cup. Oh, Mimi, where are you going to? I'm going for a dinner party. I've defined the reason for my cup. So that's basically what that means. Then define the event source, and an event source is what triggers the execution of your function. In this sense, an event source will be that question, oh Mimi, where are you going to? So whoever asks me where I'm going to, in this case, is going to be the event source. So whatever triggers an event to occur. That's simply what it is. It triggers your function. It triggers me to use the scope. That's simply what it is. So just to go over it just a quick run through. The function is created and a function has to be defined. When we define a function now enables us to know the event is going to be applied to. Does that make any sense? I know it does. So in essence, that's basically all that it is. So our cup is a function, like I said. You having to ask me where I'm going to is simply the event that triggers my need for the function, which is my cup. And then whatever I put in my cup is going to be the content of that function. So once I define my function, like I said, I'm telling my function what I'm going to do with this cup. And whoever prompts me to talk about my cup, or whoever prompts me to bring up any conversation about my cup, is the event source. It basically triggers the execution of your function. Next slide, please. So, so the next thing we have there is just further understanding on how Lambda works. Just further understanding on how Lambda works. And I'm not going to dwell too much on these individual things. Like I said, it's just further understanding. Like scaling, for instance. When an event occurs, the AWS Lambda automatically provisions the necessary resources to execute it. Then we come to the execution, just like the name implies, having to execute the code. Then we come to, sorry, give me a minute, trying to look at. So yeah, so when the code eventually gets executed, and then we have state management, which is simply the state, which simply means the functions are stateless by default, meaning they do not retain any memory from the previous execution. And what that simply means is, once, remember when we talked about functions being reusable forms of code. So it is very much possible that once this is applied at a certain point, then we can also tell the system not to have the same thing. We can update the system or update our functions in some sense to not take mention in certain places. It's like me now having to decide that, okay, I don't want to use this cup at a dinner party. So if I bring this cup at a dinner party, maybe they won't let me in. Why? Because I don't have a tumbler, I don't have a wine glass instead. So that's basically about it. Then billing, just basically talks about the intricacies of Lambda. Like it's talking about Lambda in terms of AWS, like how the billing works, the monetary, the currency. But the major things were the first three things we spoke about. And the first three things, like I said earlier on, having to upload your codes, having to create your function, and then your event source. That's majorly about the things you have to understand. Every other thing is sort of the latter, as opposed to the beginning, which is the major thing. Next slide, please. So now we're going to introduction to the AWS API Gateway. And AWS API Gateway is a fully managed service provided by Amazon Web Services that allows developers to create, publish, maintain, monitor, and secure APIs, which are simply application program interface. So think of APIs like, let's say, links, basically. So let me give an instance of this. I don't know how many people watch. Okay, let me use that as a good example. I was about to talk about reality TV, but anything generally. It doesn't have to specifically be reality TV. But then, let's say whatever you see on the TV, for instance, of course you could definitely be there physically. If you go to production sets where movies are being produced, you would see, the entire thing, how the entire movie works, things of that sort, basically. But the only way we're able to, we as the viewers, or we who are not production people, we who are not present when they are shooting the movie, the only way we're able to see is with the television. So the television is that link between the audience and the production company or the production crew, basically. So that's what APIs are. APIs basically help to link interfaces together. That's basically what API represents, because a lot of times it's really hard to reconcile certain aspects of app development. Like, let's say you want to produce an app that helps you to watch movies, for instance, but now you have to pay for that. So those are some of the places where APIs come, having to link an entirely different payment platform, for instance, to the movie platform. That's what API basically helps you to do. So the AWS API Gateway is, like I earlier said, it's fully managed, provided by the Amazon Web Services, and it allows you to create, it allows you to publish, it allows you to maintain, monitor, and secure your APIs at scale. And it acts as a front door for applications to access data, services, or functionality from back-end services, serverless functions, or other AWS resource, which is majorly why we're talking about AWS API Gateway, because there's a very big link between AWS API Gateway and the serverless functions or the serverless applications, which is where Lambda comes into play. And as we move forward, we'll see the relationship between AWS API Gateway and the AWS Lambda. So integration with Lambda. So one of the key features of AWS API Gateway is the ability to directly integrate with AWS Lambda functions. Bless me. So it is its ability to directly integrate with AWS Lambda functions. And this simply means that you can associate a specific AWS Lambda function with a particular API endpoint. So remember when we talked about APIs and we said APIs basically help us to create, they help us to monitor, and they help us to basically understand our entire the things we basically upload. I remember when we talked about Lambda enabling us carry out these serverless applications. So one of the good things with AWS API in conjunction with Lambda is that you do not only have a serverless access, but then it also enables you to monitor and even publish things alongside your serverless application. So that's one very good thing about um, AWS API and Lambda. Then execution on trigger. When a request is made to an API endpoint, the AWS API gateway forwards the request to the associated Lambda function. So when a request basically comes into the API endpoints are basically linked to the API itself. That's basically what the API endpoint is. So the AWS API gateway then forwards the request to the Lambda function. So that's basically about it. So what that simply implies is when you let's say you want to finally access let's say you want to access an API, and let's say you want to access an API. So what Lambda helps you to do, or what AWS API and Lambda in conjunction simply do, is it gives you a seamlessly smooth operation. So it's like this is moving from this to this to this to this to this. That's basically about it. So your request comes in, it goes straight to your API endpoint. Then from your API endpoint, it then communicates to your Lambda function, and then your Lambda function now enables you to carry out your serverless and enables your servers to be deployed in the serverless system. Because remember when we talked about AWS Lambda or serverless applications generally having to have the bulk of your servers on the AWS providers or your cloud providers. So it's just basically telling you how seamless the process is with AWS API in conjunction with Lambda. And then the Lambda function then returns a response to the AWS API gateway. I think I touched on that already. So like I said, it just enables a seamlessly smooth process. So from API, we go to Lambda. That the request comes into the API endpoint. The API endpoint then takes it to the Lambda functions. Then the Lambda function now goes back again and gives its own report back to the AWS API. And that's basically about it. Then response to client, AWS API Gateway then takes the responses to the Lambda function and returns it to the clients that made the initial request. So this just what you should understand from this entire slide is basically how AWS API and Lambda work hand in hand to give it the best services. So like I said earlier on, a request goes to your API endpoint then sends a request to your Lambda function. Your Lambda function then takes this request, processes the request, and sends it back again to your API, and the API now gives the results back to your client. So that's basically about it. Next slide, please. Okay, so some of the security challenges in serverless application. So we have inadequate function permission, and it is one of the major challenges when it comes to serverless application, simply because a lot of times, if things are not configured correctly, the functions may have overly permissive permissions, potentially granting more access than necessary. So if you remember when we talked about functions, we said functions can be replicated in different places. So it is very possible that if you do not configure your functions well, basically if you do not write your functions well, you might end up giving too many access to people. Let me give an instance. It is like when you employ, let's say you employ a gate man, for instance, and unknown to you, this gate man is probably an area boy. But now, in your head, you employed a gate man, but simply because you didn't take your time to source this gate man, unknown to you, you actually got an ally to the people who could potentially hurt you, like the area boys, the bad ones, of course. Not all of them are bad, but for the bad instance. So because of that now, if any of them want to break into your house, they might find it easier. Why? Because your gate man is an ally to them. But on this was not your plan. You didn't plan on having your gate man to be someone who would make life difficult for you in that essence. Do you understand? If your gate man didn't if your gate man didn't do his job well, that wasn't something that you intended, because in your own head you've equated securing your house to employing a gate man. So simply because you've done that, you just got your gate man. Unknown to you, like I said, your gate man has allies or ties with people who would possibly make life difficult for you. Okay, I'm seeing Ebenezer said, imagine showing super sports on NTA without bringing the whole DSTV package and you still get the same quality. Yeah. So imagine showing super sports on NTA without bringing the whole DSTV package and you still get the same quality. So I'm not very sure what you're making reference to, but then I would want to look at it in respect to like this entire scenario in some sense, because I want to see like having those leakages or having those leakages. You intended to just show a certain thing, but then because of the possibilities of other things also coming up, you didn't really take your time to write, or didn't take your time to state clearly what has to be done. So that's basically how the challenge when it comes to serverless applications, having to write your code and not having to configure your functions and then not do them properly in such a way that your codes or your function now gives way too much permission than it was ideally meant to. So this is basically the problem and how to mitigate the problem. So, and that's the major aspect of this, in the sense that we're talking about securing our serverless applications that are built to AWS Lambda and API gateways. So how do you now mitigate this problem? Mitigate, simply solve. How do you solve this problem? So you implement the principle of these privileges, granting only the minimum access permission to functions. So that's basically what the whole principle of this privilege involves. Having to ensure that you are configuring your functions well. You're ensuring that your functions are done in the right way, because if you're not done rightly, then you're giving access to way too many people or way too many external forces in essence. So, so the best way to mitigate this problem is by implementing the principle of least privileges, which enables you to only give limited access to certain external forces that should make use of that should access it, and then the ones that shouldn't access it would not have access. So the next thing is in secure deployment settings. And no, the next thing is in secure deployment settings, and challenge is misconfiguration in deployment settings, and it can expose sensitive information or create vulnerability. So still very similar to our first problem, but the only difference is with our first problem, we're talking about misconfiguration. Okay, please, I just saw my voice seems to be breaking. Does everybody hear me? Is it just Dennis? Can everyone hear me? Please, I'd really love to see some reactions. Oh, okay. Do I sound better now? Okay. Do I sound better now? Okay. Okay, but can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? How is it right now? Still breaking a bit. Okay, manageable. Okay, so I'll just try and go now. I'll try to speak more audibly. Okay. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I've seen all your comments. Uh okay. Okay, so I'll just go on. I'll just go on. So I'll try to speak out louder. So hopefully it would. Okay. Right. Okay. So insecure deployment settings. So the challenge is, like I said, the misconfiguration in the deployment settings. So the only difference between this one and the last one is, for the first one we talked about, which is inadequate function permission, it talks about the function itself, but this other one talks about the deployment setting in itself. So that's the only difference. But the whole point at the end of the day is, when there's a problem with your function, there's an issue. Once there's a problem with your deployment settings, there will also be an issue in respect to your security. So how do we solve this problem? Basically, regularly reviewing and updating deployment settings to ensure that they follow security best practices. So that's basically the best way to solve this problem, because it is actually a common problem. Because a lot of time, when you're carrying out certain activities on the net, sometimes we are just made to not. Sometimes we don't really take our time to look at certain things, because there are lots of codes. There are some other things that might basically make you have an oversight. So so these are just basically some of the challenges in essence. I'm trying to give a quick summary of what this is before I go in depth madly as well. So what I just want you to understand from this slide is, we're looking at the challenges that we have in respect to security when it comes to serverless applications. That's what we're looking at, some of the challenges. And we've mentioned two of the challenges. We said function permission, so inadequate function permission, not configuring, which simply refers to not configuring your functions well, which then exposes it to potentially negative or bad influences or bad or negative infiltrators who could come in simply because the permission is not tightly done. So same thing with the next one, deployment settings. Once that also happens, it's very, very hard for the security to be tight, because the deployment settings in I mean deployment of the servers, the deployment of the server settings, if it is not done well, then there could be a leak, and it could give a potential it could be a potential security risk. No, I mean, yeah, definitely a security risk on its own. That's me. So the next thing is data exposure and leakage. And the challenge here is improper handling of sensitive data within functions, and this can lead to data exposure or leakages. So when you do not handle your data well, there are very high chances that the data could be exposed. And once the data is exposed, the security is already compromised. Definitely. It's like you're my friend now, and then I come and tell you a secret. I tell you that, oh, this is the next big business I want to get into. And then you now end up, maybe unknown to you, you didn't intend for this to happen. Let's say when we're having this conversation, you're having it at work, and your coworkers now heard this big business idea, and they now take it out to go and execute it. So you might not have intended for that to happen, but you did not intend for that to happen, but simply because you you as the client, you didn't put into mind that, oh, maybe someone can be listening to your conversation or something of that sort. You different basically. You didn't put into mind the fact that somebody could be listening to your conversations or something of that sort, and it made it very, very difficult for it to become a secret. So that's what this exposure simply refers to. So a lot of times with most of these security challenges, it's not intentional. Nobody intentionally just wants to not configure their functions rightly, or nobody just wants to intentionally not ensure good deployment settings. And nobody wants to just intentionally leak the data, which is why we're treating this now. So that as someone who works with the cloud, you can know the possibilities, the negative possibilities that can arise, so that you know how to tackle them and you know how to put extra care. So whenever you're doing anything in respect with the cloud, not just the cloud, tech in general, even life in general, it's very important to pay attention to details, because it is in those little details that bigger problems could even arise. So how to mitigate this? We use encryption for sensitive data, employ secure coding practices, and implement proper access control. Next slide, please. Just still on that, I'll just briefly want to even talk about like DOS attacks, basically denial of service attacks, and these are majorly one of the most common problems that we have with serverless applications. DOS is basically just a little, it's simply very similar to everything I've said here, all in all. At the end of the day, one of the biggest problems is access. So DOS is definitely one of the major challenges that will come with serverless applications. I think it was important we just mentioned that briefly. But yeah, denial of service attacks. Major. Next slide, please. So now we come to some of the. So a large part of how to solve our problems were already listed in the previous one. So the following slide, this is basically the end of my presentation, to be very honest. So every other thing is just having to hammer further on some of these most important practices. So security testing is very similar to, if you notice in our second the second thing we mentioned in respect to having issues with our deployment settings. So you have to go through your regular performance of our security testing, code review, static analysis, vulnerability scanning on your serverless application. So this is just basically a just to send the message home, basically. So it's very much similar to what we discussed in the first slide, but I still brought it up simply because I think it's very important that um we still think about these things, we still bring them to mind. We don't just think about them mildly because they're very, very important in securing our serverless applications, especially those built with AWS Lambda and API gateways. Next slide, please. So IAM roles and policies. IAM roles and policies. Now IAM is also another AWS technology, and it basically deals with security majorly. And I won't really go into details in respect to this because there is going to be a speaker who will talk majorly on IAM rules. You can remember the speaking topics. So there's someone that will go in depth with this. So for now, you don't have to worry too much about the IAM rules or what IAM does, but just know in essence, it's basically a security technology, and then it is necessary for permission, for access control, things of that sort. There's something I mentioned here, the least privilege requirement. I'd already mentioned it initially, having to minimize the amounts of people that have access, to your functions majorly. Next, please. Next slide, please. Then API gateway security, implementing API gateway authentication and authorization mechanisms such as API keys, IAM, Cognito user tools, or Lambda authorizations. So basically all the same thing. Next slide, please. So yeah, so those are some links for further learning, and it's interesting to know that I actually plan on having an in-depth learning series on this. So eventually, if we eventually speak on it in our topic here in our little speaking session, it's good to know that you can also. I'll probably leave a link in the main group itself. Also, please, if you're not part of our user group, you should be. There's lots of amazing content out there enriching you every single day. So please ensure to join our WhatsApp user group. Very, very important. Very, very important. Very, 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 very important. So ensure to join it. But yeah, so basically, I would probably drop a link there having to talk about when the series would happen and how you can join me. But for essence, you can please feast on all these links. Take your time. You can go through them. You don't have to go in depth. You can just look at them. If you have any issues, we're always here to help at the WhatsApp user group. And I think that's basically about it. So thank you very much for coming to this session. It's been an amazing one. And I would eventually hand it over to Ade to continue with the other section. Hope you had a nice time.
Thank
God
you.
bless.
Thank you so much for this insightful session. I really enjoyed it. Your illustrations were very beginner friendly, especially the one
Thank
with the
you.
cup.
My pleasure. My
Very
pleasure.
enjoyable. Thank you so much. You are an amazing
Thank
teacher.
you.
I need to give that to you.
Thank
Thank you
you
so
very
much.
much. You're an amazing moderator.
Before we start the quiz session, if you have any question, you can just drop it in the chat box. I'm sure Mimi would do well to help us answer the questions. So let's get straight into uh, going to get gifts. So click on the link in the chat box, or you can just scan this code. Yeah, I can see some people joining in. Let's wait for like 10 more seconds. Let's see how many more people can join in so we can start immediately. Let me, okay, yeah, we still have people joining in. Join in. Let's play. Let's see how much you guys learned today. Yeah, 10 more seconds and I'm going to lock it and start. Yeah, we still have people joining in. Or should we just start without locking? I don't know. What do you guys say? Okay, I think we should just start. Anybody that wants to join will join. We have a lot of players already, so let's just start. Yeah, so the first question is, what is a common security concern when dealing with serverless application? And we have 1 minute to answer the question before we. We had more players, so we only have 7 answers. So keep answering. Yeah, answer. And I did not lock it, so more players can still join in. Still have a chance. Yes, so the answer is A, denial of service DOS attacks. Let's go to the next question. Oh yeah, we have Ibe Chooks leading on our scoreboard. Let's see who is going to top the next one. Yeah, we have, which AWS service provides a fully managed solution for serverless computing? Is it AWS S3, AWS Lambda, AWS EC2, or D, AWS RDS? And the answer is B, AWS Lambda. Let's see those who got it right. We still have Ibetrix stopping the scoreboard. Let's go. 3 more questions. Which AWS service provides a front door for applications to access data, services, or functionality from backend resources? Is it AWS API Gateway, AWS CloudWatch, AWS IAM, or AWS DynamoDB? Sorry about that. Can you guys see my screen now? I don't know why you couldn't, but if you can see my screen, please drop a message. Yeah, the answer to this question is AWS API Gateway. Let's see who is stopping our scoreboard. Looks like Ibechuk's and Prince, but we have 2 more questions to go. I mean, you guys can do it. I'm rooting for my ladies here. So the next question is, what is the first step when it comes to setting up AWS Lambda? Is it code upload, function creation, AWS IAM, AWS RDS? Yeah, the answer for this question is code upload. Let's see. Interesting. Ibechuk's nice. And Elio has a streak with 3 correct answers in a row. That's good. So the final question, what is cold start? Is it A, the time taken for a function to start after a period of inactivity? B, the time taken for a function to complete its execution? Or C, the time taken for a function to initialize the environment? Or D, none of the above? The answer is A, the time taken for a function to start after a period of inactivity. Let's see our winner for this session. Interesting. So we have LAO, Ibechuk's, and Irex. Okay. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It was amazing having you guys here. Drew, we're so sorry. Make sure you, Gods, we were so sorry. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. We have another session tomorrow, so make sure you tune in tomorrow to join. And yeah, and also our winners, kindly send your full name, your LinkedIn account, and your Twitter handle. Let me send. Yeah, somebody also asked for a WhatsApp link for the AWS user group. We would okay. I'm just going to drop send. I'm going to drop a mail now. You can send your contact. Yeah, kindly send your information. That's your full name, your Twitter handle, and your LinkedIn username to this email so we can, and also please help us drop your picture so we can post your picture we can post your picture in a flyer and also find a way to send you your gifts. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're so sorry about the inconveniences. Couch is just a really great app, and I'm guessing network might have been an issue, but we would see to it. Would find a way to make this seamless and less stressful. I can see your chat. When I was doing the quiz, I couldn't see your chat, but now I'm going through it and I can see your chat. And we're so sorry about any inconveniences. Please kindly tune in tomorrow. Hopefully, your experience is going to be better. It's not even hopefully, your experience is definitely going to be better. And let's not forget that this is a study and the quiz is just a little part of this whole session. Let's not take our attention away from the aim of this program itself. It's to enlighten us about topics in AWS. And I believe Mimi did a great job taking us through securing serverless applications built with AWS Lambda and API Gateway.
And then I just wanted to quickly say that at the end of the day, honestly, everybody is a winner here. And the reason why I'm saying this is because for you to be so eager to actually want to take the quiz is already more than enough proof that you've understood everything perfectly. So I'm very happy, honestly speaking. And to me, every single person who was saying, "Oh, we wish you could get another," you're already a winner because you already knew that you'd have aced it. So we didn't even bring it up because you know that if you stepped in, like if you stepped into that building, you'd have finished everybody and taken all the questions. So it didn't even happen in the first place simply because you are too exceptional. So you're a winner in essence, and I'm personally very proud of you. I'm very happy that I got the opportunity to even have to give this talk in the first place. And so please take your win, take your win. Honestly, take your flowers. I'm giving you your crown, and I hope you wear it
A
well.
win is
That's
a
what I'm.
win.
A win is
For
a
joining the
win.
session alone is a win. So a win is
Exactly,
a win.
exactly. A
Thank
win is
you
a win.
guys. Thank you so much for coming. This was a very, very interesting session. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to join in tomorrow. We have another session tomorrow. And always remember, it is Monday and Tuesday. Monday and Tuesday. So if you don't win today, come back tomorrow. You definitely win something. And a win is a
You
win.
even won.
Thank you
Genuinely,
guys.
every day
Have
you
a
win.
great evening.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
Have a great evening. Bye, Mimi.
Bye.
Bye,
Okay.
everybody. And
Okay.
don't
Bye,
forget to
everyone.
follow our the pinned message. Don't forget to follow all our social media outlets. I have it pinned there in the chat box. So just go there, follow. Don't
What she
also
said.
forget
Yeah. Please follow the social media handles to stay updated.